So I was born and raised in a town called Kenosha, Wisconsin, most famous for the American Motors Corporation. All the AMC cars were made, of which my dad was the supervisor of the planning department. And raised in church my whole life. I come from a long line of Christian family, of which I'm thankful for. Heavily involved in our church, and my life has always had some type of ministry and community involvement in it. So my earliest recollection of the funeral service industry was when I was 4 years old. Mr. Johnson there at Hanson's Funeral Home in Kenosha, where I was born and raised, was our family funeral director. At 4 years old, my mom tells me that when I approached my dad's casket, that Mr. Johnson picked me up and held me the whole time and actually fell asleep in his arms. It left an impression in me that a man was strategically placed to be there for my family in our darkest times. I was actually in Bible college, and unfortunately at the age of 20, I lost my stepdad. So it was time to sit at Mr. Johnson's table again, this time as a 20-year-old man pursuing career options and whatever God would have for my life. From a 4-year-old kid who remembered a man as a safe place, to a 20-year-old man watching this man literally love and protect my family and walk us through this amazing journey of celebrating and honoring my dad. My wife is my soulmate, my best friend, and my partner in ministry and in business. Her whole life is service to people. So I count it a huge honor that God brought us together, because it's one thing for one person to have dreams and goals, but how cool is it when your family can share in your dreams and goals? I remember the day that we scheduled the flight. We had talked to the previous owners and we came to Seymour. We were very moved and very excited for what we saw. We saw a town with family. We saw flags flying. We saw good old American culture and American values. My wife laid hands on the building. She said, "God, if this is your will, make a way. If it's not, shut the door." And about 2 weeks later, we got the phone call that our offer was accepted. And the Christensen family headed to Seymour, Indiana. And December 1st, 2019, we were the owners of a funeral home in a town that we had grown to love already. This chapel that we're sitting at is the largest chapel in Jackson County. We can accommodate 200 people. And the number one compliment we get when people walk in here is, "I don't feel like I'm in a funeral home." We were pretty content with Christensen Funeral Home here in Seymour and loving and serving people. And then suddenly the opportunity came for us to go into discussion with a family-owned funeral home in Scottsburg, Indiana. Rich heritage of funeral service there. For 5 generations prior to the Hoaglands, the Stewart family was there, dating all the way back to 1886. And so we have a room in our funeral home there in Scottsburg. We call it the Heritage Room. Goes all the way back to 1886, honoring all 5 generations of the Stewarts, and then 22 years under the Hoaglands, and then my wife and I. And we are pretty honored to be the 7th generation of family ownership there in Scottsburg. In May of 2023, I get a phone call. "Hey Dan, Winklepleck Funeral Home in Brownstown is an opportunity." The opportunity to get this amazing building was something that I really hoped would take place. And July 1st, 2023, we became the owners of Christensen Family Funeral Home, Winklepleck Chapel. And I chose to keep the Winklepleck name because, once again, honoring the past. By the help of God, we will always be a family-owned funeral home. When people walk in, I tell everybody, if you choose Christensen Funeral Home, you're going to be served by a Christensen. And that's an important aspect, and I think people appreciate that. So part of mortuary school, which is required to be a licensed mortician funeral director, is you have to do an apprenticeship. And I was living in Jackson, Tennessee at the time. I had just graduated from John Gupton College of Mortuary Science in Nashville, Tennessee. And a man named Bob Arrington took me under his wing there in Jackson, Tennessee. Bob is what you would call the funeral director's funeral director, and was able to take me under his wing, teach me, love me, correct me, because he taught me a couple things. He said, first of all, Dan, a funeral is not a wedding. There's no dress rehearsal. You get one shot to get this right. And he also taught me that it doesn't really matter if the family spends $1 million. If mama doesn't look right, nobody's happy. So things like that were put into me, that you pay attention to local customs. You build relationships with your pastors here in town. You honor the way the family wants it done. Knowing that you get one chance to say goodbye, we want to make sure that to the smallest detail, it's done the way families want it done. Scripture says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." David said that. So I kind of take that a little personal, that while someone's walking through this valley, how cool is it that I get the opportunity to lock arms with them and say, you're not alone in this valley. Because when you walk through something, there is another side. And I've always considered it an honor that there are people in my life that have poured into me, taught me love and respect and courtesy for other people, from my parents to other funeral directors to my pastors. It's just a good feeling. I want people to know that they will always be honored, that they will always be respected, that their wants and needs are important to me, that I take very much to heart, that you get one chance to say goodbye. You're trusting me through one of the darkest points in your life, and I take that so much to heart that I always want to be known as the place that they were loved, honored, respected, and they were never alone in the process of walking through the valley.